Welcome to the Chase Merrell podcast. I am your host, Chase Merrell, and we are all about helping people get freed up from what's holding them back so they can build up who they were made to be.
In today's conversation, I have my longtime mentor, my pastor, my friend, and probably the person that had the most impact on my life and my discipleship as a follower of Jesus and a leader outside of my parents. And his name is Kyle Monroe Bethke. And this guy was and is still to this day an absolute rock in my life. He really helped speak into my life and call out the things that God had begun and placed in me from a young age. Middle school, going into high school, he was my youth pastor in that space, and then I got to be on his team in my first official full-time ministry role as a youth pastor in Modesto, California. And I'll just tell you what, like this guy is beyond the real deal, and my time with him today to get to sit down and share part of our journey of relationship and overcoming different moments of hurt and even at times senses of betrayal and rejection, to experiencing the depth of relationship we have now on the other side of not giving up on each other. I cannot wait for you to get to hear this conversation today. I know it's going to encourage you and challenge you, and just for you to get to meet one of, if not the greatest impactor in my life outside of my mom and dad. This is going to be special.
If you want to help us continue to make an impact with this podcast week in and week out, consider joining our new Patreon community. For as little as a cup of coffee a month, you can be a part of helping us get the message and mission of the podcast out to more people more effectively. This is a way that we can come together as a community, and you'll get access to behind the scenes stuff, additional resources and content, and so much more for just as little as $5 a month. You can head over to chasemerrill.com and click Patreon to jump in and get started. Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by Frontline Coffee Co. Delicious, bold, and expertly roasted small batch coffee for the everyday American. Frontline is not just about coffee. They're about supporting responders on the front lines, courageously caring for the rest of us. With every Frontline purchase, a percentage goes to supporting the brave men and women who are doing just that. Head over to frontlinecoffeeco.com and use promo code FREEDUP. That's FREEDUP, all one word, freed up, to get 15% off your purchase. Now let's jump into today's conversation.
Kyle Monroe Bethke, Pastor Kyle Bethke, my pastor, mentor, discipler, friend. I mean, the list can go on and on.
The list goes.
Yeah, and we'll unpack more about part of the way you've impacted my life. But man, what a joy to get to have this conversation today, have you on the podcast in person, like eye to eye.
We've been waiting months for this.
Yeah.
We wanted to do it in person.
Absolutely.
So maybe it would have happened sooner had we not
for sure
planned a summer little trip up here to the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. I remember when I officially asked you, part of that was, like how could we make it happen? You guys are in California, so you're not, you're a little farther away from being here in person to make it happen. But you, I know it's not the only reason you came up here, but I know part of that may have been the how can we do that? And,
absolutely.
So it means a lot to me, the fact that you're on it, but the fact that you also made a way for it to be in person, it just means a lot to me. So thanks for being here. Thanks for making it happen.
Thanks for asking me. This is incredible. I know that Marcia is involved in this as well.
Yeah, we're having you both here to get to record 2 episodes of this in the same day. And not fully sure yet how they're going to be released, about when and where, but you're gonna be the you're going to be released before her. So you got maybe
there could be an online vote about who
they want released first.
Who's better.
Yeah.
No, who does better. We all know Marcia will win, but I mean, just one more thing, allow the Lord to keep me humble.
Yeah, sure. The defining process. But man, like the two of you, just the impact that you've had on my life and Holly's life, it's on the Mount Rushmore of the impact of my life when it comes to those people. We got to have you guys in our church on Sunday, and you guys preached and shared, and God, it was so cool just to hear you guys share the way that I've always known you to share, but just the authenticity and the who you are side coming through for our church to get to experience that, and for us to get to experience it again, kind of on the front row, getting to receive. And so just the last few days getting to spend some time with you have just been, it's been such a gift, for us. But for those that have no clue, okay, so there's people that listen to this that don't know who Kyle Bethke is. and your connection to me. Will you just give them a snapshot of who you are, just within that snapshot, and just even right now in this season, where are you at? What are you doing? Who are you connected to? So people can kind of get to know you a little bit before we dive in.
Well, been married for 20 years, 3 kids, Colby, Riley, and Jackson.
Yeah.
Colby's 17, for those of you who know us out there. I can't even believe he's 17 years old. Just got back from 2.5 weeks in France with Jordan and Vanessa Abina.
Yeah.
You know who they are.
Yeah. We had an episode on the podcast. Yeah. So.
And my daughter Riley's 14. Involved in a whole lot of sports. They're both involved in worship at the church and other ministries and youth group. And then Jackson, our little joy and terror, 11 years old. And so anyway, we met when we were at the time Sunset Christian Center, not Destiny Church.
Yeah.
Just a great moment to pause and say, so many good people.
Yeah.
And the top of the list would be Pastor Greg and Kathy.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't know each other
without
that phenomenal church and those leaders who brought us from the Bay Area in 2003 and hired us as their high school pastors.
Yeah.
And so a few years into that stint as high school pastors is when we met. And so that's when our relationship began. So thank you to Pastor Greg, because this is such a significant relationship that I know would not have happened without his part in it.
Creating. I may have mentioned this on another episode with Riley Silva because of our connection and relationship. He was in our youth group, and obviously part of your ministry and stuff as well. But that speaking of Greg and Kathy, like that, just they believed in the youth and the next generation enough to go out and hire some good youth pastors to invest into that space and go, even though you had been a youth pastor or a young adults pastor before. There was still like somewhat of a this isn't not a risk, but
we were young, yeah.
Yeah, you guys were young.
Newly married. We'd been married less than a year when we came up to Destiny.
Yeah.
And just not just hiring one person, but eventually hiring both Marcia and I full time.
Right.
Funding an intern program that would just leadership pipeline, just catalyze student ministries, and they did that not just for us, but for Dave and Kim Leatherman and other people that were part of your life.
Yeah, big time.
Just huge.
Yeah.
And so that was 2003 when we came up there. You showed up probably 2005.
Yeah, 2004.
Okay.
It was when we moved in, and I was in 8th grade, so we didn't have a ton of overlap until the summer going into freshman year. So which would have been 2005 summer.
Yeah, I did not meet Chase Merrell. I heard about Chase Merrell before I met Chase Merrell, but I met you. It was at some little worship practice.
Okay.
And little guy walks in with a guitar.
Yeah.
And because you talk about summer camp and things like that. Yeah. You weren't on my radar yet.
Sure.
But I just remember little guy walks in with his guitar with the strap that was basically stringed to
it was not
to the neck of the guitar. not a real strap setup, but mom and dad set this up for me. And anyway, he walked in and started playing. He really couldn't play at the time, but you were somehow in the band or in fine arts band or something. I don't remember, but that was the first time that I remember saying. And then after that, you were always wearing a pink shirt, little pink polo.
Polos were in. Man, the Abercrombie American Eagle world was pretty hot back in that, from what I heard, from all of the chicks. So
that's what you heard so often from all those chicks, no doubt.
I look back at some of those and I just don't know how it all existed. But yeah, so that was 2004, 2005, and then I was trying to remember if the summer going into freshman year, there was a Whitewater leadership camp that I think that I got invited. I think I was able to come, but I can't remember if you guys had incoming freshmen go to that or if there was something that you waited until. Yeah, because it was student leadership, like pacesetters or core team. That was not until sophomore year.
Yeah, I think we brought a broader group.
So then it was Whitewater.
It was beyond pacesetters or whatever.
So that was where there was this first overlap of where I did the last summer camp as an 8th grader with Dave and Kim for the detour camp. But then there was this, hey, you're coming into high school, come to this Whitewater rafting leadership thing. And that's kind of where it just all, I was like, oh, these are now, I'm being transferred into a new world of leadership under these guys, Pastor Kyle Mercia, Bethke, where for me it was just this brand new world of like, anything is possible here. That part of what.
Well, and once we inherited Chase Merrell, a brand new world.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and when I do think about now having the chance to be a youth pastor myself twice in 2 different contexts and in ministry, for 12 or 13 years now, I do realize what, like, it's just going to sound so dumb, but like what I was thinking of some sports illustrations between like head coaches and quarterbacks or different things like that. I'm not going to give myself that much of the NFL pat on the back that I was just about to. That would have been way too much. Maybe more like no, forget the metaphor. It was a perfect comedy. Like you had a guy that was like, I mean, I was hungry. I wanted to grow. I was ready to be challenged to take my faith to the next level, because it was really around that time where it became real for me. And for me at that point, it was like, well, okay, if this is for real for me, then I want to give this everything. And you really embraced and embodied a person in my life that genuinely was like, you can give it everything.
Yeah.
And you being somebody yourself that had and was still giving it everything. So it wasn't even just this concept or idea, or like even the Bible stories that I had grown up. It was like, oh no, I have a real life person right now, and my parents are amazing. Like they raised me to love Jesus in a Christian home, and they loved Jesus. But it was even just different, like in their world of pursuit. I hadn't been around anybody who was like, no, this is worth giving your life to in this way. And so for me, it was a brand new space. And then, it was something that I knew I want to tether myself to this guy and grow and soak as much as I can from him, because this is where I want to go and where God's calling me to go, really is what I felt.
Well, it was kind of the perfect season from a ministry point of view, because we'd been there 2 years. If I think about just the classes, who was a freshman when we first came in 2003, and then basically, so you would have been the third freshman class for us. And it took a while for us to get to know the students, the families, the church, to work out all the getting to know you as a new whatever. So you showed up as the ministry was really
you guys
stepping into kind of a different gear. And so, I just think about all the great students, that unfortunately I can't keep in contact with all of them over the years. And I wish that I could. And I just think of all the folks that might be watching this that like, I can tell you how often I've thought about, man, we need to get together at like a reunion, Christmas party or a pool party or something, just to get all these people that have moved on to no doubt life and families and whatever. But like just an incredible group of students, an incredible group of students that came, an incredible group of students that were in student leadership or involved and volunteered, that I wish I could sit down with each one of them like this. That each one were special in their own way, in their own right. But then at that time to have you come along with, just as you just described, hungry, and be a friend to all these people and a leader in the lives of all of us in your school and your neighborhood and your family and whatever context at the youth group was pretty awesome too.
And there were moments where I felt like, there probably was a lot. Like there was some taming. There was some like in a healthy, like wise way. And I'm thankful for the way that there were seasons that you even guided. Man, we believe in you. What do you need to make it happen? But also times of like, hey, take a chill for a second and really process and see. And I think about that balance of that kind of leadership that I got to have in that season of just like, you really helped guide that piece in me, where I learned both the balance of, man, dream, go after it, go big, but also, to remain steadfast and faithful and consistent and don't just whip to the next thing because it's the next thing. I remember there being a season where we were just super infatuated with all of the stuff going on at Bethel Church and up in Reading, the Spirit of God stuff, which, was good. I was good. We were hungry. We wanted more. And we were pursuing it, a lot, and, within our own youth group and church. But then there was this, like, I want more kind of sense. And I remember having conversations with you where, you didn't discourage the pursuit of more, but you encouraged the wisdom around processing and really laying that stuff before the Lord and allowing the wisdom of God to go, test all that stuff. And, there's just something about being even within under one house and one leadership and one community that you're pouring into, when you start kind of having all these different places of covering, it can, it was a thing that I hadn't had really a concept for, that it took a strong but sensitive, humble leader to pull me back a little bit and go, I want to encourage you to be wise about this. That I think about that and all of the opportunities I've had since then with other people in my ministries, in my life, to have moments like that, where they're just all gung-ho for something, or there's just this new thing or this new whatever. And I remember, I can't say how many times I've come back to that moment you had with me, which was so loving and such a good leadership moment to pull from and go, not to kill dreams, not to kill believing in somebody, but to help infuse wisdom. So there's all these little moments, man. Like there's one of 1,000 like that really I recognize. I said this on Sunday from the pulpit or from the platform when you guys preached here, that there's not another two people outside of my mom and dad who have made as much of a significant investment into who we are as people now, both followers of Jesus, leaders and pastors, husbands and wives and parents than you and your wife, Marcia. And I keep seeing more of that come up and through as I've been in ministry longer. I'm like, that's Kyle. That's what Kyle's done, or has did, and it's just in my DNA now. And
I mean, what a privilege to be, even in that conversation for you. There's something to just remaining steady in people's lives. There's in each of our life's relationships outside of, and sometimes this can apply to our blood relationships, where it's in a family we can disconnect and just, how hard is that when families just can't figure it out together. But outside of family, there's all kinds of reasons why we could walk away from relationship or allow a relationship to die, to choose for our pride or for whatever, to stand in the way.
Yeah.
And I think that in our relationship and in so many relationships in our life, we kept just trying to say, you know what? I'm just going to trust the Lord with the pain, with the whatever that I feel.
Yeah.
To kind of come back another day. Let's have another day together. Let's have another week. Let's have another month. And that just always has just been an abiding principle for Marcia and I.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so talking about...
Oh, before you do, I want to say that season, Chase, Merrell, you burned bright.
Yeah.
And there certainly, as you mentioned, were those days where we were worried about you burning out.
Yeah.
And how brightly you burned. But was a great testimony to the community as you became a high school student. And I don't know how much this kind of stuff comes up as you talk about things, but like someone needs to say what a great witness you were on Whitney High School, Christian Club, and through your vision. Yeah, we came alongside and got behind it just because why not? I mean, any dummy knows how to ride a good wave. And so, you just were there. And I mean, hundreds of people began to come to different events you did. I remember the day of fire at William Jessup that, a bunch of people came and community businesses got behind you, like Chick-fil-A and other places. And so, I mean, I could go down a list of just different things. So outside of our youth ministry, in which you were a great catalyst, and to be a catalyst in your school and that kind of stuff. And that wasn't normal. There was a lot of people that were involved, a lot of people that were leaders. We taught that anybody can be a leader because you're a person of influence and you're leading somebody someplace. And that's true. That was true for so many students that showed leadership. But for a group of people, you were a catalytic leader at the center, providing a plan beyond just a desire. And so you did awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
It was a blessing just to be just a supporter of that.
Yeah.
There were days in which I may have been the youth pastor, but you were the leader and we were just on your team.
Yeah. That I receive and appreciate that, man. I think that was, when I look back and as I have now been a youth pastor, like I mentioned twice, and I, tried to get into that space of like, how did that happen? Like, how did I feel so motivated and like driven to be who I was in that space in high school, connected to so much of it. Obviously, God was in that and all. He was calling me. He was the one I was hungry for. But there was part of what gave me the opportunity to even experience what that was the way that you guys called us up into something so much bigger than what we were. It was you created the landscape of a mission that was like worth believing in, that was so much bigger than ourselves. And so there was, I think, you believed in me and in what God could do in and through me and us, not just me, our students, our youth group, how we could impact our campuses for Jesus now. And we didn't have to wait till we had a college degree or figured out what we were doing with our lives for that to start happening. It was really genuinely this sense of like, one life, one chance, like right here, right now, we can do this. And I really bought in a way that was like, it wasn't even bought in. It was like, I'm in. Like it was it. And so I think about the opportunities that you created for that landscape to even be laid for me to step into that. And that's part of what I recognize I'm still trying to do for others today, right? It's not just from the youth group standpoint, but I still am trying to create an environment every Sunday where I'm opening up the possibilities, and I'm trying to help paint the picture for people to see like what's possible with the Lord, and whether that's a relationship, or whether that's going deeper in a relationship, whether that's a miraculous provision or whatever it is. Like there's just this being a part of the mission of making disciples who make disciples. Is something that I'm still trying to do, and so much of that I got to, the inception of it for me was getting to really watch you do it on a week-to-week basis.
Well, and my mind goes to just honoring Larry and Shelley Merrell, who in a season where they're just watching, their firstborn just go for it.
Yeah.
With probably that burn bright, burn out, thought of that, the both sides of that thing,
Sure.
wanting to see you burn bright, yet so, still they're the primaries of shepherding you into your future. To know that balance of when to empower and support you and when to pull you back. They did it so well.
Yeah, they did.
Because none of that happened at the level that it did without parents supporting. And you had some of the best supporting you in that tension.
Yeah, we really did. OG Larry Girls and Shelley Merrell have been, and we're a huge part of it. The fact that they continue to encourage that space for us throughout those years was massive.
Yeah.
Couple quick things before transitioning to like the season where things hit kind of that bump, if you will, that I want to just highlight because it's still massive. It's still a massive part of who I am in the day to day with people. And one of those was when it comes to relationships, there's, it's difficult to give everything to everybody, especially with time. Like there's always, for me, been more people than I have time for to give where I'd like to. And one of the ways I watched you as a leader and a pastor in my early years following you show me how to do that well was this whole concept of like bringing people along with you. It wasn't always this, let's go have a specific lunch or dinner or whatever coffee meeting, but it was like you rarely did something alone. It was like, who can I include to come with me to do this thing or project or errand that I need to run? That even if it was on an off day, a non-working day that you guys had on your schedule, you found a way to include and bring people alongside you in the in-between stuff that really, when I take a step back, I go, that's so much more of how Jesus did it anyway. But I recognize, like, when I think about those little small, like, they're not small, but they were just, they weren't principles that you talked about so much, although you had lots of those, it was the I caught it kind of stuff that you had a lot of, and that was one of them to this day that it's changed my ability to be a leader with people, and it's the come alongside. Don't ever do something alone. Invite somebody to go do it with you. Opportunity to see more people that way. I just absolutely loved. And the other one, I mentioned it earlier at lunch today, but is this ability to chase and pursue the one and see people like not you are undenied, like you are not denied for the opportunity to make somebody feel seen. And I remember at youth group, there'd be times where, you'd finish preaching, do the response call, come to the altar, we're singing, and right as we're kind of wrapping up, it's time to exit. You're peeling out the back door of the youth room, running down the stairs, running through the other side so that you can get to the front of the entrance of the church where people would be exiting, knowing that probably the newer students that came, maybe not as comfortable hanging out and being there, were going to be leaving first, to make sure you had a chance to make sure they were seen, or to get to meet them or know their name. And I just remember, every week, I just remember thinking to myself, like, that right there is the kind of heart for people that I want to have. And I really believe God has helped even deposit in me to this day. And so those are like small little things, but when I think about who I am now, those show up pretty consistently. And I go, oh, that's Kyle. That's Kyle Bethke, and the way that he modeled that for me and made such an impact in my life in that short, kind of small season of our younger years under your guys' leadership.
Yeah,
there was a point which which has been so cool is we've actually had a few different environments to kind of process, even from a public forum side. I think we've had on our last Sunday with you at one church. We were able to even do kind of a version of this, walking through our journey together and some of the things that the Lord has shared and taught us along the way. But this may have been there. But why it's so significant is because it was such a turning point in my life and ministry that the Lord used to, just do an absolute truckload of things internally. And then now I look back and see how much of it. And it was graduating high school and doing an internship that you guys had, which at that time was like the internship. And you guys had built the youth ministry culture that was second to none. There wasn't a youth group in Northern California that even touched what, not that it's about that in any way, but it was just different. You guys had people knew about what was happening at Sunset Christian Center, Destiny Christian Church, youth ministry, far and wide, because it was just different. And so the internship was a big part of that as well. And I knew I didn't want to miss out, and some of those things that, at that time, said yes to that world of, okay, I want to do this out of high school. And, at that time it was a 1-year commitment, but really it was a 2-year program. So every year most people did 2 years. There weren't that many that just did one. But to cut to the story there, because there's more to our story that I want to unpack, but I don't want to miss, because of how we're still sitting here today after that world, is that, about 6 months into it, 5 months into it or so, there was a wrestling in my heart and soul that was like really difficult to walk out with the seeing the future of finishing the program at that point. And I had weighed this sense of, is the Lord calling me to quit this internship early, 6 months early, basically, of the year commitment plus the other year that would be there? Is it just because this is harder than I thought? Is it just because I'm restless? It was just this crazy journey as an 18-year-old. It was really first time processing something so significant. And it ultimately led to the decision to make that call to step out and to quit early. And that was a pretty painful couple months, walking that out with you. And, I know it wasn't just painful for me. I know it was painful for you, in that moment. And part of it was because at that point, again, outside of my dad, my biological dad, right? You had represented the person in my life at that point that I least wanted to disappoint. So it wasn't even just for me, like, I don't want to do the internship. It was the thought of sacrificing or losing this relationship with the person in my life that I don't want to lose their relationship or their disapproval or lose their approval the most with. And so it was weighty and it was hard. But I stepped into it. it was, I mean, I look back on that pivotal moment and, man, I know for me, looking back on that season, there's two things that stand out. There's one, our relationship I know wouldn't be what it is now had that not happened. Right?
Absolutely.
There's definitely some of the redemptive, restorative power of God along that, which I'm going to talk about, or have you talk more about because of your response to all that. But the other piece of it genuinely is this deep regret of not fulfilling my commitment and my word when I think about my formation as a man of God and as a man of character. That I go, there aren't a lot of things in my life that I look back on and I go, the regret is there because I didn't honor a commitment. And then there is for that. And I wish that I would have at least fulfilled the commitment through the year, looking back, to be a man of my word more than I walked into, because I can feel that the principle factor of the Lord in that, of the biblical principle of letting your yes be yes and your no be no, that was broken there outside of even our relationship and all that. And so those are two things I know that for sure stand out. But taking a step back, what would have and could have and should have probably been a pretty significant breaking of relationship because of how many things were involved there, ended up not,
right,
which is pretty rare.
And somehow ended up being, I think, the thing that has bound us together.
Totally.
More than anything else.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Which is crazy.
First of all, leaders, good leaders,
yeah,
hurt people sometimes.
Yeah.
And we don't need to. In fact, most of the time we're trying to do something really good. We're trying to do something for the Lord.
Yeah.
We're trying to do something for people and our love for people. We hold on sometimes when we should let go. Sometimes we just, in our complimenting of one thing, we can unintentionally undermine another.
Yeah.
In our complimenting of one person, we can make another person feel second class. And the hardest thing about being a pastor, about being a leader, this works inside and outside the church, but is no matter how good or godly you are, there can be, and I would say there probably are, there's just some damage in people's life. And so as I think about that season with you, I didn't do everything right. I was probably more emotional than I needed to be. Not that emotions are wrong, but to put them on others, to allow them to be felt by others when they're just for you, that's a big deal. And I remember the day that, you told me, you and another person told me on the same day.
Yeah.
He's been on your podcast.
Yeah. Little guy, right.
And, and that was a really difficult day.
Yeah.
And, I remember being in my office, just crying afterwards. Both you and Riley, very, very significant.
Yeah.
Your families in my life. And so that was a pretty rough day. And it took a while for just, I would say it took me probably a month or a month and a half to really, and you still were a part of the team and walking out, finishing the semester, that kind of thing. But it was tough. And so, in that moment, one thing that I really learned was, I can think of 2 or 3 different situations that shaped me into becoming what I have often said. People at our church, they've started to say it for us. We're open-handed. I learned to be an open-handed leader.
Yeah.
I learned that to hold on to people was ultimately sealing the deal of their departure.
Yeah.
If they're going to go, let them go. You trusted God's Spirit to bring him.
Right.
You got to trust God's Spirit to lead him away. And if you do this, the truth is you stand to keep them, whether that's, in the physical location or it's just relationally long term.
Yeah.
You're going to be in their life longer. And nothing speeds a departure up more than to do this or make them feel this. And so I think there's probably a month or month and a half in which I made you feel this, probably. And that's a mistake. But I think some of the special parts of the story were what happened next, is, at least for me,
for sure,
as I realized. By the way, you say mistake. You didn't finish a commitment or something like that. But isn't it powerful how the Lord takes what might be like plan B? Yeah. And I don't even know that I like that phraseology. My parents divorced when I was in 8th grade. I don't see on a human level how that decision that they made doesn't, if they hadn't, I think I'd probably still be in Texas.
Totally.
Never would have been youth pastor.
Right.
I married a California girl.
Right.
Have California kids, just like all this stuff. And so on a human logic level, I can't see how that decision, but like now that happened, and then we move on, we grow in it, we lean into the Lord. I mean, to say that my life now is plan B is just the last thing that I would ever say about the people that I'm doing it with. And so like, it's just really interesting as I look back and I think about what happened next in your life. You got to go to Australia, Steve Grace.
Yeah, Steve Grace.
That was a curse word in our life for a little bit. I'm just kidding. Steve Grace. Yeah. But no, by that time, I think we'd really been at peace with the whole thing, and to see how the Lord in his sovereignty created plan A for you, and then use that in our life.
Oh yeah.
A significant moment was you were leaving on an airplane. This was after like the T Swift encounter and a few other things that were quite interesting in that season. But you're getting on an airplane.
Yeah.
And I remember going to Marcia, and I don't know that we were invited to your farewell dinner.
Yeah. At that point it was just our family, because it was out towards the airport. I had to fly out of San Francisco.
So it's a long way.
To Sydney, or to Melbourne is where we were going. Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, you're 2 hours away from there.
And I remember going to Marcia, and I just said, first of all, I'm good. I feel good with Chase. But like, I want him to know that I'm good. Yeah. I want him to know that I support this thing that comes as a replacement of the intern program. And I called your parents up and invited myself to your farewell dinner at Joe's Crab Shack. Yeah. Down at Fisherman's Wharf, I think it was down there, right?
Yeah.
And went to dinner with you. And it was just me, for me, as much as it was for you, saying, I'm not going to live back there. Yeah. You know what? I believe that there's more in the future, and there ended up being a whole lot more. Yeah, for sure. There's more in the future to believe for, to let this be something that's like in our spirit and in our story. And so drove down, celebrated you leaving, prayed over you, all that stuff, and then stayed in contact with you while you were gone via Skype.
Yeah, Skype.
No FaceTime back then.
No, and man, I've thought about that moment a lot over the years, because of it was significant in its impact. It wasn't just a gesture, for me it was bigger than that. It was a demonstration of I love you, and I still believe in you. And for me it allowed me the gift as well to go to Australia with this unknown space and world that I had never stepped into, with a different kind of clean slate and freedom for me to go. I'm emotionally and relationally good with the people I care about being emotionally and relationally good with. It was a gift from the Lord for me to get that from like I said, the person I was so worried about hurting or disappointing the most, for that pursuit to show up in person, not just phone call or text, but like, I'm here, as a representative of like family sending you off and believing in you this next season. It meant so much. And that, so that that right there though, I think is, when I think about Kyle Bethke, break him open. Like, just, who is he? What comes out of him when he's split open, like, bleeds this? That right there is what I would say. And there's a lot of strengths, and there's a lot of great things, God giftings, skills you've developed that could totally be a compliment or added to this. But that whole concept right there of pursuing the relationship, keeping the relationship bigger than the problem, or trying to keep the relationship bigger than the hurt or the offense or the disappointment, is what I would say is probably the brightest and most loud part of who you are. That's been the most impactful with the most amount of people, and is so special to me because I think of how much that imparts the Father's heart and embodies the life of Jesus to the people around you, more than any sermon you preach, more than any leadership lesson you lead, which are all like good quality things that you've invested your life into as well. But it's that ability to go, the person and the relationship is more important than the problem or the issue or the hurt.
Well, and I think honestly, the older you get, the harder it is to have that.
Right.
Because you get busy and they get busy.
Absolutely. It costs more to do that. The older you get, I think. There's more to sacrifice on your end of life from time or whatever it is to pursue something like that.
Yeah, and then, no matter how willing I am to say, hey, to my 3 kids or wife, hey, I need to go talk to this person. I need to go, break through with them or get through or whatever.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more I realize it's a 2-way street, that there has to be 2 different people that are willing to take the time.
Yeah.
We benefited from, in early days of ministry, we benefited from ministering to people who had more time and had a willingness to give more time. And so I think it's one of those, I have to adjust my expectations, and on some level they have to adjust theirs, because it's easier to have a pastor when you're younger.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the people who are, that's my pastor.
Yeah.
You almost always will say that about somebody when you were younger, when you were in your teens or your 20s. It's harder when you get older to have that same kind of relationship that often involves a little bit of this. The people that I'm close to, the ones that are my pastors, I had this with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't know. Yes, I am relationship as you describe and focused on the person, but I don't know that I always manifested that well. Like I always say, I don't want people to feel used by me.
Yeah.
I want them to be utilized. So back earlier you said take somebody with you or to run an errand or do this, that. Yeah, I mean, I was always trying to bring somebody with me, but like no doubt there are people that like, well, Kyle calls when he's got something to do.
Sure.
When he needs something. And yeah, I might have benefited from their help, but I could have done it on my own, or I could have called someone that had to come with me.
Yeah. Most of those people though, so I don't want to take away from the fact that you are being, I honor and respect your humility and your self-awareness to what you're talking about, because I think it's really important as even people are listening, like what you're identifying. But I also would say it's hard to, if you haven't been in the seat, like I have now been after you in a similar seat, it's really difficult to see it and understand it. And so there's no justification for the not growing or having those things that you're mentioning, but I just want to encourage you. You're saying what you're saying, that I say what I'm saying now from being in your shoes now to see that I absolutely understand in a new way because I've been in that seat. And a lot of people that feel some of those things haven't, it doesn't take away their feeling from what they've experienced, but they just haven't sat in that seat to understand it through that lens. Anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but I definitely think that, well, that's a factor to all of that.
I mean, if you had different banners over different parts of our conversation, I think that one would have to just be that, the Lord has been so gracious.
Yeah.
Despite
a
person that is so trustworthy and lovable, I try to be that.
Yeah.
Despite two people, like, we needed the Lord. And I think for any relationship, I just think about that because, man, it's not for the faint of heart.
No.
To follow Jesus. It's not always a cakewalk.
Yeah.
And to lead for Jesus with heartaches and disappointments, mainly because I'm a fallible person, and people are humans. It's just so that was that season of really just taking the high road and learning to take the high road despite feeling betrayed, or whatever. And that went both ways.
Sure.
I know that you at times probably battled that sense of betrayal from me. You maybe not wanting what was best for you or whatever that might have been. But like we just said, you know what? Let's put all that stuff in the rearview mirror where it belongs.
Yeah.
And believe for the best today.
There's a lot of people I have that are even just running through my mind right now that have some similarity, maybe not to the same detail of part of that journey for us when we separated there, but have some similarity to there being they're at a pretty pivotal point with a person or people in their life where they have some decisions to make or remake around how they will choose to try and pursue any kind of restoration or reconciliation or not. And I just think we're living in an age right now where there is not a lot of emotional maturity that's going before people enough to help them even be able to see that there is an outcome like this possible. And so I just see a lot of people giving up before they even try. Or just expecting there to be no outcome of any kind of restoration. Like, well, we've disagreed. They left us. They're going to this church, or they said or did this or whatever. And especially since COVID, there's this, you guys experience this as pastors and as we did and so many others in the church world. But also this translates to church congregants. This sense of like, where did everybody go? Or people just left without even communicating, all this stuff, right? And so I even think for some pastors out there, there's this like, well, there's no hope. And you can't make amends with everybody. That's not your responsibility, all that anyway. But there's this sense of like, it's not impossible to experience anything good in a new season of relationship on the other side of this rejection or separation that we felt. And I just want to say, I want to be a voice that says, like, our story speaks different. God in our story speaks different. Mm-hmm. Different season, not COVID, all that, but principle, it's similar in the sense of that it is possible with lots of grace, I think with lots of patience and understanding, I think with lots of relentless pursuit and willingness to continue to remain open-handed and all of that there really can and could be something beautiful and even stronger that can come on the other side of that separation with the Lord. That I would really encourage anybody listening, if you're in that space and you have people in your life that are in that kind of category, that hey, don't keep it all hung up like it's never going to be, but you might have to be the one initiating.
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things that come to mind. You just started to say it, but I've been on both sides. I've been the leader in the relationship, and I've been the follower in the relationship. And the Lord does not let me off the hook.
Right. That's good.
In either case.
Yeah.
So, what does that mean? It just means that it's nobody's responsibility more than the other person to pursue a relationship.
That's really.
And again, we're not talking about when there's been some form of abuse.
Totally.
Physically, emotionally, sexually, all that stuff. I mean, that needs to be said. In those situations, separation is in order.
Yeah.
And with wise counsel from a therapist or pastor, any kind of reconciliation should be only considered with that counsel. But like when we're talking about just the examples that we're talking about here,
relational, emotional, mental,
like it is both parties' responsibility to lean in. Like for us, I was a second ago. I said I'm so grateful for the Lord and His part in it, His grace or whatever. I don't want to take away anything from the Jesus in us that made all of this story possible.
Right.
But I want it to be known that like this was a whole lot of very, very natural decisions that we each made.
Yeah.
And we didn't let a lot of time pass.
Right. Totally.
I mean, like, there was, again, end of October, November, when we talked about it. I remember you going down right after the first of the year for, to sit by Taylor Swift and all that stuff. I remember that kind of thing right after the first of the year.
Yeah.
But it was a short time after that. We're talking probably 2 months.
Yeah.
Total time in which we were going about like business as usual. Still in relationships, still talking.
Yeah.
But like, just kind of like there was something. But then it was very quickly after that we began to bring it back. And it was towards the end of that semester of the Joe's Crab Shack.
Yeah.
You're headed off.
I think if I remember right, maybe my mind's up a bit. Even there was like I think you invited Riley and I over to work out with you. Does that ring any bells? And in your garage kind of thing in Lincoln. It was just
back in that day when we didn't really know how to work out.
But it was just but again, that to me, as I think about it, that was you, and that was intentional. But here's the thing that is important. I think for you found what you worked to do was find the common place that could be a connecting place for us. You knew it may not be
a space where we could lay down all our pride.
Yeah.
That's I mean, sure. The biggest thing that stands in the way of us figuring out relationships
absolutely
is our egos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or us feeling like I was wronged, they need to be the ones.
Right.
And like, I'm just back to nobody gets off the hook. Like, who cares who?
Yeah.
Like, every divorce is a two-way street.
Yeah.
There's often the actor and the reactor. There's often the one that ultimately makes a choice and the one that was making choices for years and years.
Yeah. That
created a space in which, and again, without getting into all that, like two-way streets in every relationship. And so like the mature people realize that.
Yeah.
And then lean in, they apologize, they take ownership for their part. And, so I just think for you start talking to the people out there, on this subject, if they've been hurt or whatever, I think the biggest thing about all that, to have this kind of story, really means we got to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
We got to schedule the meeting, the coffee, the whatever, and whether we were in whichever seat we were in, leader, follower, victim, not victim, I don't know, all the titles you could put on this thing, but like, you just have to be the, and I'd say even be the bigger person. Like that puts you in an adversarial position with the other person.
Sure.
You just got to be God's person.
Yeah. 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 And that whole scripture of I forget the language exactly how it says it. You'll remember it. But like, as much as it is to you, as much as you basically can.
It depends on you.
As it depends on you, go and make right. Like that idea, I think, is where a lot of people quit too soon, and they don't take it all the way to the as much as depends on you part, and they don't heed what you're saying for a variety of reasons, fear, pride, inconvenience, etc. But I just I affirm in after that. Like I think there's a lot of restoration and redemption stories that are waiting to happen. Because of what God can and will do in people's hearts and lives, that I think a lot of people have already written off as it's not possible. And I just think, man, the world needs to see more of this happening in the church. Not to like make the church's image nice and clean again or whatever, because obviously it's been pretty battered and bruised, as it has throughout all of history, different seasons. But I wonder what could happen if the world began to see the offenses and hurts and disappointments and rejections and separations that have happened within relationships within the church begin to get restored again because of some of this Jesus stuff that starts really infusing into some of these spaces. I think it'd be pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So then, the way I went to Australia, man, God rocked me in different ways out there, and you did maintain contact and relationship, and to the point that, by the time I came back, like God had made clear to me, and through different opportunities that he was opening up, there was a ministry job back at our church where
I remember calling you saying, this is crazy. So about 9 months ago, this guy left us. Pastor Greg empowered us to have that conversation about a role that was lateral to our ministry. Not just within the high school ministry, but young adults.
To
have that first conversation. And And, and it didn't make sense to some people that were close to it all.
For sure. Well, and it makes sense that it didn't make sense. Why would you trust a guy with an internship that he couldn't even complete or finish to come on and be in a more official capacity with that kind of way? We just setting ourselves up for another one of those, kind of situations. Again, being in this seat now with having that kind of opportunity with other team members or whatever, I can see it through a new lens. But I'm so glad for the grace, and I know it wouldn't have happened without your pursuit or your vouching. You've had to put your name back on the line, if you will, to say, if it does happen, I'll take that as it was, Yeah,
there were some friends of ours at the church, and not on staff or anything, but they're just like, what?
Yeah.
No, that does not make sense. No.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing. Like, some of our offense is when people that we love are hurt or betrayed by others.
Sure.
And so, like, I often find that those folks are often the last to get over something. I've got to allow time for the people that are, like, in my fan club or whatever. I got to take them on a journey when the Lord's doing a sovereign work of forgiveness or restoration in a relationship. And then we got to turn to our spouse, to our friends, to whatever, and say, no, the Lord's doing this.
Yep.
It's okay. Because it just is counterintuitive to the whole thing. So, short time later, you're back on the team at Destiny.
Yeah.
And it's going amazing.
Yeah. And also working part-time at Chick-fil-A, which I had throughout high school, which happened as a byproduct of your encouragement because you worked at Chick-fil-A.
I worked at Chick-fil-A for 2 years. I got fired on my second year anniversary at Chick-fil-A.
That's right.
Because I had broken the 3-strike policy 3 times. So they kept breaking their 3 because they loved me. They cried. No, the owner-operators, they cried when I left. They're like, we're so sorry. We love you. We don't want to see you go, but we just have to. You're a moron. you have to go. And for the good of this organization, we have to finally mean it. So I was late 3 times in a month after being insubordinate 3 times and violating uniform dress code 3 times.
Oh my God.
I was late 3 times and they let me go. My second year anniversary. Cold-hearted. No, I'm just kidding. People deserved it.
9 infractions in 2 years.
Yeah. No, 9 infractions in 3 months. But like
every shift you were working, basically,
I was working the 6 a.m. shift, so I was late 3 times in a month.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not a. Those who know me, I'm not a disciplined person. I can't wake up on time. I can't be responsible for that. But anyway, so you followed in my footsteps, but you were much more loved and respected at Chick-fil-A than I was.
Chick-fil-A. Still to this day, people understand the way that it has, because you weren't just the guy that worked there. You helped me understand the beautiful relationship I could have with Chick-fil-A, like, for my life. So it was also the love of Chick-fil-A and
Does
the sauces.
Does that go beyond food?
Yes, it's heart, it's emotion, it's everything.
Sauces.
It's sauces, and so.
Have you picked? Do you line up the sauces?
Not anymore, but I will never forget. I'll never forget the way that you would open up those little and do the variation of sauces. But no, Chick-fil-A. I came back, had this job at the church and working with the young adult ministry and worship ministry and Chick-fil-A still. And that's really where, God began to form those, like, okay, you're called to ministry, vocational ministry, to be a pastor is actually coming into the clear now. Because at that point, for me, there was still this wrestling. And honestly, one day we'll probably even have a more expanded conversation of what I'm about to say, because I think it is a big part of my life. But is this unique journey that I've been on with how to hold this, what you watched happen between those ending the internship early months in Australia and coming back into, was this always this little piece of me that was like, God's called me to more beyond the 4 walls of the church. I felt that in high school.
Yeah.
And yet I simultaneously felt the call to the 4 walls of the church. And getting that the church is not the 4 walls, but you know what I'm saying? It was this, I felt like God wanted to use me to reach people in creative and different ways that may not always look like the way the church world had looked. And yet I loved the church world and saw that was still and so I always felt like I had this foot in one out, but I never really saw that as an option, or the people in my life, that had been in that church space, you and Pastor Marcia, Kim and Dave, Jordan and Vanessa, and even Pastor Greg and Kathy, 4 couples of people that for the most
working at the church.
Right. And there wasn't this anything else. And I remember feeling how much of this was truth or not. My own version of how I felt it, right, was that if you did anything else or tried to do both, it was a compromised call to some degree. You couldn't. And either you needed to realize this was worth it more than this world. Now, again, I don't know how much of that was ever explicitly shared or said to me, but there was that deep sense of I don't see it, and I also feel like if I tried to do this, it'll feel like this group of people that I love and respect will not accept that, or that it'll be a disapproval of them to some degree.
It was unintentionally reinforced.
Sure.
And again, one thing I would say to you and so many people who, everybody I believe has the call of God on their life. It's just some people do that from inside the 4 walls of the church in vocational ministry. Some people do that as missionaries on the field. But then, obviously, the rest of people, tons of people do that through a career.
Right.
And it's been an ever-evolving process, even lately, that I can say, like, we didn't do a good job of stressing the importance that somebody as an athlete, as an artist, as a business person, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever, could go and do kingdom business.
Right.
From that, or even ministry, inside and outside the 4 walls, but still under covering and healthily and all that stuff. So, I mean, I feel like you were a catalytic person amongst so many, because it continues. I really believe pastors, if they could figure out a way to reinforce that there are no boundaries between the sacred and the secular, that it's all one picture, and just empower people to go and live on fire for Jesus in their place of work as a call, because it is. I believe that the church would just go to the next level. Yeah. But we've created, unintentionally, but because we don't address it actively, it's very intentional. So that's back to now, knowing what I know. Sure. I think very intentionally, I should have said to you, to all kinds of students and student leaders, hey, some of you are it's going to look like this, and some's going to look like this. And praise God, because all of that is beautiful to Him. Right. And it doesn't have to look like this or this or this, because we end up creating this tug of war, this tension, this competition between what you think we think is best and what you feel God's calling you to do or be. Sure. Yeah. And that, again, back to hurt, back to leaders unintentionally hurt people. Yeah. Oftentimes it's just the fray of all that.
Oh yeah. Well, and then to that, you're genuinely, as a leader, again, being in those shoes now in a different capacity, you're genuinely wanting to love the person you're leading as much as you can, and that's what you see. You see that in them, or you see your own way of experiencing health and growth in those things, and so you can. It's hard not to go, no, like this is the better way, or whatever that might be, because it seems it just makes more sense, and it's not because you're trying to be manipulative or coerce or try to gain something for yourself, as much as there's a genuine I love you and this is right, kind of thing. And I think that's hard to navigate at times, right? Whenever there are those different things that are there with those different calls. I felt like I was a fish out of water a little bit, because I was like, I don't see anybody else doing what I feel like God's stirring up in me to do. And when I try to step into this a little bit and do it, it's not met with a ton of receptivity or celebration like it is when I preach, or like it is when I do the internship or do the whatever it might be. And so that season of January till going through end of Australia was kind of the initial place of what is this, Lord? And so all that back to
and I hate that tension. I hate that people felt that, wherever they found themselves, in our ministry at that time, or looking from afar, that basically there was this any kind of sentiment that because I don't look like this or act like this, that I'm at a different place in relationship.
Sure.
Or, and then ultimately that I'm at a different place with my relationship with the Lord or the church. Totally. I mean, like there was a connection to that. So like, if I could go back, I think that I'd figure out a way to communicate what I believe, and that is that God has called us to radical pursuit of Him.
Yeah.
But the way that fleshes out in each person's life outside of the radical followership of Jesus is not the same way.
Yeah.
And I would have figured out a way to really celebrate. That's a great word. Not just the opposite of trying to not talk or talk somebody out of something or whatever,
sure.
but like to celebrate
that.
Like we did when we said, we're going to celebrate you going
to
Australia.
Totally.
We're just going to choose to, because ultimately God could really use this, and He did.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's remained a part of my journey literally until this year, and, so coming back into experiencing that call back to being in the local church from Australia and being a part of the team again and experiencing just rich ministry and time with great people in a great season, led up to you guys departing and transitioning to step into leading, your own church for the first time in Modesto, which was its own whole process. But, it wasn't too long after that there was an opportunity for us to go, and for Holly and I at that time, we were engaged. I think we were engaged. No, because we had just broken off our engagement. Before that.
Yeah.
When you actually called, I think you actually called Holly first, if I'm not wrong. You know why? Because I was with her.
Yeah. I think that we thought we wanted to call you.
Yeah.
And so we called Pastor Greg.
Right.
And just asked if it would be all right to call you. He was gracious.
Yeah.
And then we had heard from Kathy, I think, that there was a rekindling that she had heard or knew of.
Yeah.
And I think we just thought to ourselves, we want this to be good for Holly and Chase,
right? Not
just Chase,
right?
And so I think we called her and just said, "How do you feel about this?"
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think I remember that, right? Yeah. So in that, there was this. Would you pray about being youth pastors down here in Modesto with us at this?
And we knew that youth wasn't necessarily the thing that you
at
the time had in mind to do,
especially because
probably wasn't at all the role you would have said yes to.
No. Well, no, especially because at that time I was doing young adult ministry and
loving it.
I mean,
the team that you got to do
Kim
it with.
and Dave and 512 in that space was just they were just doing an incredible job reaching the young adults in that area, and then the opportunities to do ministry with adults as well. So as a 21-year-old feeling like, all right, I'm already impacting adults. I don't know about going back to youth. That was my flesh and my pride, right? But in praying, we knew the Lord was obviously stirring up something that was bigger.
Well, the funny part is I think we were going to get on the phone together, and you told your parents right before you walked in your bedroom, "Hey, pray for me. I gotta let this guy down.
Yeah.
I gotta let him down easy."
100%. And it was, I told my dad, pray for me, pray for Kyle, pray for his heart, but pray for me that I can kind of communicate it in a way that, again, I still wanted to honor our relationship and not lose some of this restoration we'd experienced. And man, there was something in that conversation that, and again, this a testament to God and the Holy Spirit, because I had experienced strong leadership from you before in multiple ways. And so there was this sense of me that was like, okay, I'm not gonna, I know what I think and where I'm at. And so the guard of being convinced otherwise was high. And yet in that same space, the guard dissipated because it was bigger than you, and it was bigger than me. It was the Holy Spirit. And so by the end of that phone call, I got off and I was like, I just knew God was in it, and it all the details were going to get figured out. So that was it. We made the decision. I made the decision, and Holly and I were in the middle of still kind of, not in the middle, but we were restoring our relationship and friendship from a broken engagement. And
That was a joy just to walk with you guys through that season of restoration joy for you. It was pretty special.
Yeah, you guys were really there for us in some challenging things that, it was massive. But so we got to come to Modesto in 2012, the Monday after Mother's Day. I remember that because my mom reminds me, because I loved her on Mother's Day weekend.
You were our first hire, if you will, because we inherited the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Some of them are still with us today.
Yeah.
But you were the first outsider to come to Modesto, of all places.
Yeah. And
for you at that point.
And for us, it was like, we'll be here. I think we felt like we'll be here for maybe 2 years. And we felt like I think
so everybody says.
Yeah, I said we may have even said
being longer.
Hey, we'll give it to you. We'll help lead and try to like kind of do something in this youth group for 2 years. But then we don't want to buy a house here. We don't want to have kids here. It'll kind of just be that place for us to have the first opportunity to lead ministry, our own, that we haven't really had yet. And we were there for 5.5 years, and in the middle of that 5.5 years, fell in love with the community, the church. We bought our first house, had our first kid, all of the things we said we wouldn't do. First dog. We had dog siblings. Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
So Remington and Sadie, brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
in our
crazy.
dog family.
And Jordan Gianni, if he's ever listening to the podcast, he's a part of that too. He's got trigger. But 5.5 years that we thought we were max going to be the 12, and that's a testament to the community of people that you guys have also fallen in love with, as why you're still a part of that. You guys have been there almost 10 or 11 years. 12
12 in September.
Jeez. And that's the whole world of One Church, and in that space is a podcast conversation in and of itself in so many ways, because of just kind of the miracle that has been some of the things that God's done in the last 12 years. That's been built on, ministry that was labored in for 25, 30 plus years with great pastors before you guys, and how you transitioned in and honored and loved them, and still honored and loved them throughout the last 12 years to this process of.
And the people of One Church in Modesto loved Chase and Holly Merrell. They still do.
Yeah, it was shocking how much we loved those people. Like we were shocked to feel like in 2 years' time how deeply connected in community we felt with that group of people, and yes, still love to this day.
The Lord gave us more opportunities from another big church in Sacramento wanting to hire you away from us.
Yeah.
And you praying through for about a month. That was a very precarious month to wait on.
Yeah.
Just hearing, and you coming back and saying, no, we don't feel like we're supposed to go, and you stayed.
Yeah.
By the time the Lord led you away up here to Olympia, Washington, we had such a peace.
Yeah.
We knew it was time. We knew it was the Lord. And we were ready, as painful as it was to say goodbye.
Yeah.
We were ready to once again release, and this time without any kind of concern or whatever. So the Lord really had done such a neat work to position us over the years for this really receiving and letting go that just becomes so natural when people love and trust one another and trust the Lord.
Yeah. And I remember the way you handled I don't remember when we shared that. The Lord gave us a word. It felt like a year and a half maybe before we ended up even getting the actual opportunity or phone call to come up this way around.
I remember the word.
Yeah. Do you remember?
I don't know if it's the same word. You said to me.
Yeah, you tell me what you tell me.
You said to me that I won't leave here until you find a leader better than me to follow.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Yeah. Yeah. It was there was part A and part B. Part A was that he was calling us to serve one more leader before we were the leaders. Okay. But they had to be leaders.
Different leader, obviously.
Yeah. They had to be, because at this point we hadn't, outside of Greg and Kathy and Dave and Kim for a minute, but from youth ministry to internship to
we were the ones.
You're the only leaders we'd ever experienced, and not that I don't think there was just this word of like, before you're the leader leading a church or a senior pastor, there's another leader I want you to get experience with and under. But for me, it was the caveat of like, well, they have to be a better leader than where I'm at, because
why go backwards?
Yeah. Well, these guys are they're top level leaders and they're constantly still growing as leaders. Like that's also their pursuit. So they're continuing to get better. So it's going to be pretty hard to find people that were going to be in that kind of category.
Well, and I remember thinking, that sounds right. Yeah. I mean, like, again, I probably could have been a little bit bothered, insecure, offended, whatever at that thought. But like, I just remember thinking, yeah, that sounds about right. I want that for him. I better be all that I can be, so that he makes it really hard for him to find that leader. Yeah. But I mean, that's part of why I'm mentioning all this too, is because of the way, you responded to it. You even went to the extent of like, let me help you find him. If it's going to be this, maybe it's Scott Wilson in Texas, or maybe it's, this person is, maybe I can help you even get to that space or that leader. And again, so I'm sitting here now in this seat and leading in other people. And to think about doing that in that way for somebody else, that's the kind of leader I want to be. If someone says something like that, rather than take that offense or hurt that it could cause, the insecurity of like, oh, I'm not enough for you. Okay, I see how it is. It probably stung a little bit, but it also was like, yeah, okay. How can I help you do that healthily? You get to decide in the moment where something could sting, whether it does or not. I mean, more than you think. Yeah. And it's almost like you receive a statement like that, and you get to decide if you just, like somebody square punched you in the face or in the gut. Yeah. Or if you deflect it, because that's one way to go about it, which that's better than getting hit square, right? Totally. But then there's a way, of course, I think, to take it where it's not just absorbent or deflect it, and you turn it into what the Lord is up to. Yeah. Like, okay, well then let's just make this part of what the Lord's doing. Let me get out of the way, and I know it's probably the illustration breaks down, but like let's do something with that momentum. Yeah. For God's glory. Right. And not make it about us. And so, I just remember in the moment that it could have sting, I just decided not to let it sting, and it wasn't even just manning up and not letting it sting. You just lean in, you embrace it. Yeah. And so a year and a half later or so, when you brought up John Kobler. Yeah. Am I saying his name right? Yeah. For everybody that's watching that knows him well. Yeah. But who, by the way, called me. Yeah. So honorably and said, hey, before I ever even talk with Chase about this, I want to know that it's right with you. Yeah. You've known him for so much longer. So before he even called you about this opportunity, he talked to me and he went as far as to not just say, hey, I'm letting you know that I'm calling in. This is a courtesy, or asking for his blessing or my blessing or whatever. But he really said, if you want to call this thing off, I respect that. Yeah. And I thought, man, this is a guy, if not the guy, that Chase could need. And so what was really interesting is like there was just this piece that when you said that's the place, that's the one, I was like, well, I know you've been praying about that for a while, and it's been a year and a half that you didn't go anywhere, and you had all these other opportunities. So like it was just such a piece that like I just trusted you with that, and it wasn't an offense. And so
there was so much, it just, words can't really express, because again, until people have been through things like that with people, when they have the opportunity to be hurt and react in a way that is protective, self-protection by separation or pushing back or biting back or attacking back to make some sense of what's going on. And they choose not to. And they choose to keep relationship bigger than whatever it is. It is just so God-centered. You just see gospel stuff in all of that in a way that like it is so much more powerful than messages that are preached at times. Like it's real life stuff, right? And that just sticks out like, so much for Holly and I. Because of the way that you guys handled that with that maturity. And I know God is, he's not only is he honored by that, but I know he has and will continue to honor you for that. Also because it's deposited in me, and now I'm going to deposit like that, right? Like it is not just stops with me. It's honor that flows down because it happened to and for me, but it's going to continue to flow through me because of the way I saw it modeled.
We get to and we have to reset a narrative out there
Yeah.
for our generation of how pastors behave as it relates to,
for sure,
being open-handed with resources and with human resources people.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm reminded also that it was a season of growth in which I was pursuing mentorship in my own life,
right?
Reading books, podcasts, whatever, but also like getting kind of making it a plan where it's actually on paper. Like, I'm going to go and pursue 1 or 2 mentors, not in this house, that you chose John.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So like,
what even happened?
I set it up like years before
for sure.
by saying you need other voices in your life besides me, and a lot of pastors won't do that because they want.
There's an insecurity.
I just trust the Lord with that, and I saw its benefit in my life, and it didn't make me any less loyal to my pastor that I had other leaders in my life, and so anyway, and it's funny because I can think of situations like even with the churches that we've planted or adopted. I can think of people that I encouraged a relationship between them, and it meant that they ended up leaving our church to go with these people, and their volunteer hours, their financial support, all that, and it goes back to like I'm like gotta blame myself because I set up this relationship, I encouraged it, but like that's I think part of like no regrets. Yeah, you just realize, and the Lord has been so faithful to just build something where people go and not forget about us here, or his church here, or his, the people there. So it's just like, you just see how the Lord just fills in the gaps. And on some level, outside of missing people, things don't miss a beat. Yeah,
absolutely. God provides, and really the give and take away side of things is evident in those moments. And, I mean, for us to be able to be sent like we were to Washington to Living Water and sent with such a spirit of belief and honor and support, championing, was, again, another gift for us in that season that meant so much to us and won't leave us, and how we were able to finish and not just kind of be skirted aside kind of thing, but like the time to say, man, like let's lean into this transition in a way that will honor the people involved in the Lord,
for just the honorableness of the whole season. Because our church at that recent season had invested in taking you to and Holly to a missions trip, and then sending you on sabbatical, and people gave their money. Yeah. And some people might remember this, but like on that day or week or whatever that you left, your church here, John and Fawn, sent a couple $1,000, $3,000 something back to one church and said, we realize that you really strung out a long departure here between sabbatical and a few other things for Chase and Holly, and we just want to honor you. And you and Holly gave of your own money back to one church. It's totally unnecessary, unexpected, but what a blessing to have. I mean, the story could just, all the different pieces of the Lord in it all, but men and women just taking the high road. And moments of transition is pretty much our story.
Yeah, totally. And the temporary cost of ego, pride, whatever, time, finance, whatever, that it can feel like in the moment, it is far outweighed in the return of what comes through some of those things. Like I said, being able to sit here today with you and have what we have is worth so much more to me than so many of those moments that could have been easy to be like, I don't want to be hurt like this again, or I don't trust this again, or I didn't deserve this to begin with. All those different ways that people could respond that you didn't. And, I definitely learned from a lot of those situations for myself, and have a different future of trajectory and transition because of those things for me, and it's worth it. It's worth the cost up front. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm seeing it now. And when I think about what's in front of us, even yet, just the the things part of our relationship too, outside of the ministry space, I have to just mention this just because when I think about Kyle Bethke, it's impossible not to, but those adventure kind of things that we've gotten to experience, mission trips for sure, travels overseas.
We've been to Turkey.
We went to Turkey.
We've been to Spain.
Yeah, okay, so Mexico.
Mexico was our first trip.
Yeah.
Fiji.
Mexico.
Was it Guatemala?
Honduras. Mexico, Honduras, Fiji back to back. And then we did
Turkey when you were a youth pastor.
Turkey. And then
Spain was Project Rescue.
Spain, Madrid. We
went to Normandy together.
We did do. I have the sand right there. I have a few of your things over there.
We shared a loft in London.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Four of us.
We did. We've been a lot. New York. We did. Hillsong, the Hillsong conference in New York, but very prevalent, relevant subject nowadays. But some of those I'm thinking about are like hiking Mount Whitney.
Yeah.
A failing one. And
well, you let me down a couple times. The weather.
Whatever.
The weather.
Whatever.
The weather got to us. Blizzard conditions in October. It was like we rounded that corner and the glass lake just blizzard. That shut us down one year. Jordan. Next year, a year later.
Yeah, it was. Let's be honest. He's not here to defend himself.
Yeah,
he
Jordan.
Won't even listen.
Jordan threw up 16 times on the mountain. I wish this guy could be in better physical condition. You know? But like
Jordan Schlegel may have been a factor to us not completing this.
But you were so glad. You told me afterwards, you're like, I could feel the heavy coming on altitude sickness. I was so glad that I could blame Jordan.
But praise God, Jordan threw up 16 times because I was about to be the guy that said we have to not do this. But the third time was it.
Third year. We finally summited the highest
14,952 or something.
500. It's 14.5 right in there. Highest
14.5. Yeah.
Peak in the lower 48.
Insane.
You have to go to Alaska to find a higher mountain in the United States.
Yeah. So though, I mean, and then Colby's 13th birthday.
That was special. You came down just for that.
Yeah, manhood kind of camping trip ceremony time with
my oldest son.
Yeah, Colby, your oldest son, and your brother and dad, and Jordan was also there. Jordan Schlegel.
Pastor Caleb.
Yeah, Pastor Caleb was there too. That's right. I think Riley. No, Riley wasn't there. But having the
a couple people couldn't come.
Yeah, having the opportunity to get to be around you in that significant moment with your son, who
is 13 years old.
Yeah.
For Jackson, we'll probably wait till he's about 17.
Yeah.
Same for the equivalent.
Yeah. But for me, I recognize I wasn't on your staff anymore. I lived here and was pastor here. But to get to come back and be around you and see you in that bigger picture of the role of father, and I got to see you obviously be a dad throughout those ministry years, but it was something so special for me as a younger father myself, who had I think we just had Weston and Bo at that time. Holly might have been pregnant with Delaney, but to go, this is actually what it's all about. And watching you be all in on this, it wasn't just the weekend, but it was how you've been leading and loving him up to the weekend itself, and the things that you had in store for him, and just the way you loved him and helped him see the value of his identity as a son to the Father and to you. And it was just so special.
And placed him in the lives of, strategically in the lives of other men.
Yeah.
So that, alongside of me, in partnership with me, or in my absence, whatever the situation, there's other people in his life.
Yeah.
Like you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a privilege for me, and what an awesome young man he is. And Riley, just strong woman of God already as 13, 14, where is she at? 14, 13?
She's 14.
Yeah. And then Jackson in his own, unique God design,
that dude is a warrior for the Lord.
Oh, yeah, he is a warrior indeed, and just the Bethke family is their kingdom impacting and beyond the immediate place that they are, man. You guys are kingdom impacting, worldwide kingdom impacting family, and and worth following and emulating. So, man, the last question to kind of wrap up our conversation, I ask every guest in some capacity, but this whole thing's about helping people get freed up from what's holding them back, so they can build up who they were made to be. Part of the journey that I've been walking is walking in that as much as I can more and more, and hearing other people's journeys throughout these conversations. At some point that kind of comes out in some capacity, but for you, what's something in your life that, you know, stands out that you can think of that you would identify as held you back from being who you were made to be, that you've overcome? Or in this season, it's like maybe a more lifetime kind of thing that you would say is something you feel like it's holding you back from stepping into all that you were made to be, but you're overcoming it lifetime. Is there something that stands out that you'd share just with a piece of that journey?
Obviously, there have been difficult times in my life growing up. You know, my parents divorced that I mentioned, and my dad traveling the country at that time. My mom moved to Mexico, so 8th grade graduation day, that was the day in which everybody kind of was in their separate worlds. And to move in with grandparents and have the church surround me, there's a lot of places in which I think, if I think about my story, I must have had just a whole lot of thick skin to survive. So it would be unaware and perhaps a little bit narrow-minded to say there weren't ways in which I was not free or not walking free during those times. But acknowledging that and all that would have accompanied those seasons in my childhood, that would have been youth days for me, high school days, and then young adult. Well, without having an insensitivity to that or ignoring it. I think by default, I come a little bit, hardwired to not really care what people think, and to not be bound by that, by the expectations of others. I feel more expectations of myself than I feel from others. That I would choose to be bound or not freed with. But
you have a pretty high bar for yourself in most categories.
Yeah, and so I think just being okay, with the B and not the A. And again, I had to give perfectionism to the Lord a long time ago because no one's perfect but Him. But even the bar of excellence, the bar of what's the best that I can do, sometimes is a difficult one. But I say all that to say that for most of my life, I felt like I did not feel like there was something or someone that was holding me back or that I needed to whatever until recently. So my answer is as a recent one. And that's just, I feel like the older you get, the more the stakes are raised for life, for family, for ministry, for leadership. Obviously there's more on the line. My kids are older. They notice everything. Just the church, you're leading a whole church, not just the ministry of the church. Or, in my case right now, you're responsible for multiple congregations. And so just the stakes keep getting higher. And I think it's really easy. It has been for me to begin to believe in all that tension, what I perceive people think of me. Or they actually do think of me. Like I hear they think this of me, or they tell me, because I love that people are honest. Or I perceive it. Just thoughts about my readiness as a leader, my ability, whether it's practically to lead or emotionally or mentally to lead. It's real easy for me to perceive either the constructive or lack thereof criticism out there towards me as a leader or the church or ministries that I'm a part of helping to build. And for this season right now, I am just constantly giving to the Lord what it means, what people might think. Not that I'm like feeling like, oh, this or that, but like it feels like an interruption in the way of what the Lord wants to do. And my natural place to go is to just get mad about it. And so it's really just the freedom, as you use that word, that I feel like I'm trying to walk in or stepping out of. It's just the freedom to go back to being comfortable, just being me.
Yeah.
I don't have to, like, I'm the first to walk into a staff meeting and apologize for an unwise word or whatever. At least I try to be. And so it's not about apologizing, because I feel like I've just grown very accustomed to apologizing for this person. But I think it's more so getting back to choosing to not lessen who God's created me to be because I'm trying to make myself more palatable to others.
Yeah.
Like, to trust the Lord with that, to trust them with the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
And that's for others. That's for my relationship with my wife, who I live with, sleep with, and office with. And so she's right there alongside of me, leading the same capacity.
Right.
And I'm probably her greatest joy and greatest inconvenience most days. And so, like, just this comfortability, saying, Lord, I mean, I'm going to always apologize. I'm going to take ownership. I'm going to try to treat people with honor as I honor you. All that, yes. But, like, I want to get back to where, without a little bit of flinching, I'm just being me again, and being the leader that you called me to be, without worrying or wondering what people, my effect on that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've been so sensitive to my effect on people for the last couple of years that I've actually watered down my effect for Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the freedom that I'm wanting. And you know, I'd say about a year ago was the turning point.
Yeah.
That I'm stepping into just a confidence in the Lord and confidence in Him.
Yeah.
And what He's called me to do. So.
Yeah. I love that, man. Thanks for being vulnerable, sharing that space. And when I think about the unapologetic and, you know, young, passionate, earlier years of the Kyle Bethke that ran me down, you know, to call out the great stuff that Lord had in front of my life, and to call me to the great pursuit of Jesus above everything else. Like that was what drew me in that, you being unapologetically you in that space. And so affirm that that journey of just the Lord using you in that way. And He still has, obviously, for years since then, but just that you have years in front of you that are going to be able to be more comfortable in your own skin again, but with maybe, you know, for lack of a better metaphor, stronger muscles with, you know what I mean, the ability to lift more weight, help more people because of what He's developed in you, but with the same skin of who He's, you know, who you've been called to be. And I think it's going to be pretty cool to watch. I get excited about a lot of people when I think about the things that God has in front of them, because of just the unique calls that they have in their life, or the kind of personalities God's given them, things that they've experienced. But you and Marcia are like two of the top. When I think about excitement, when I think about, man, like what God could do still, even though He's already done a lot, even though He's already done, you know, we're in recording 2 episodes in one day, you know, having Marcia here, having a conversation. Hers is going to be released later, but
actually, she got like an episode and a half because she interrupted us.
Yeah, that's true. She got 2 episode FaceTime.
She just can't avoid the camera.
But I said this in her conversation as well, because it's true to the two of you as a family and a couple. But I mean, how you've already impacted the kingdom of God up to this point of your life is already like in the equivalent of a lot of what people will do in a lifetime, if not more. And yet you have more than a second half of impact that God has in front of you to make. That is going to be massive and really enjoyable. And so I'm excited to be on the outside, still getting to watch, but be close enough to be connected to your guys' hearts in that, and see what the Lord is going to do. Because, you know, I think about the world that we're going to be going into in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years with the gospel need that's out there. The world's going to need leaders like you who have the ability to step into the fray, be unapologetically yourself, relentlessly pursue people, and fight for those relationships even when it doesn't make sense to, because there's a lot of that separation that's going to be plaguing, I think, the now church and the future church. That's going to need leaders that are unwilling to give up on people in a different kind of way that you and Marcia and the way you love and lead people are, that the church is going to need. And thank God the church will have in that way, wherever you are, whatever God's called you to do. But God, it's exciting to think about. So yeah. Well, man, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for making the drives, for the texts and phone calls, the opportunities to get around you, even since we've moved to Washington. But I think when I think about, the relationship we have, all that we've walked through and have overcome, it's just such a testament of God being real. And for me, my family is impacted by my kids, my future grandkids. All those things will know and have the markings of Kyle Bethke on their lives because of the way that you've marked my life. And that's it's pretty special to me. It's just bigger than youth group. It's bigger than an employee relationship that I got to have with you for a season. And it's been significant. So I love you.
Love you, Chase.
You mean a lot to me. And man, pray that the Lord continues to cross paths in unique and exciting ways in the future. I know He will, because of who He is and His track record already. But thanks for taking the time to be here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. For everybody listening, thanks for joining us. Until next time, see you later.